Hello, everyone. Welcome to this interview for the Break the Cycle Summit. I am super excited to be joined by Emily Wilcox today. We're going to be talking about all things money. So, Emily, welcome to the summit.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany.
So I was telling you just before I hit record, there's plenty of women out there who are leaders around money and who talk about women making money and women holding on to large amounts of money and having wealth. And the reason that I asked you to be part of the summit was because your approach to money feels the least ick. It just feels the nicest. It feels the most like feminine and the most natural without forcing it or, elements of the masculine popping back in. So I wanted everybody to know because, there's so many other coaches who talk about money, but that's really why I wanted to have Emily part of the summit. And I think you're going to see that as we go through the interview. So before we talk about money, why don't you tell everyone about you and your businesses and what brought you to this point?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for those kind words. And I'm so grateful that there are so many money teachers out there because, we don't always all resonate with them. And so it's nice to have a buffet that we can choose from. So my story is that I worked my way through corporate America, became an entrepreneur, built 2 7-figure businesses, but very much in the masculine energy. So I know you're a new mama. I was, working late after my babies went to sleep and doing the nap time hustle. And for 3 years, still working a corporate job while building my first business. And so although we'd hit this 7-figure mark, which was incredible. First of all, I didn't feel as rich as I thought I would feel. Second of all, the way that I did it did not feel scalable. When I thought about growing to multi 7 figures or 8 figures, it was like, wait, the math doesn't make sense. And what I would have to give up is not something that I'm willing to trade for more dollars. And so really in doing more inner work and recognizing the places where I was my own upper limit problem, I was able to welcome in so much more feminine energy into my story and my relationship with money and the ways that I was growing my business. And so while I still do like divine masculine energy, there was a no balance. And so for me, welcoming in more trust, more surrender, more flow, more ease. And really, I love that you're talking about breaking the cycle. So much of it for me was really looking at what childhood wounds and beliefs around money were still being carried forward. And I was still acting like that was the way that I was going to relate with money forever. And if I were to trace it back, it was like, something that my 7-year-old self decided was the way things were. And so it was so liberating to go through that process of like deciding, well, is this the way I want it to be? Or can I completely change the story so that I can have a new relationship with money moving forward?
And I think it's so important that you highlight that because for myself as well, our parents, they got their money beliefs from their parents who likely
lived through the Great Depression.
Yeah, I was just going to say, who grew up through the Great Depression. And so we're carrying forward these belief systems that were created in a time where scarcity was, in the world today, people are talking about, oh, the next Great Depression is coming. But if we're honest, like the level of technology and tools that we have today, we'll never go back to that time.
Right.
So in the work that you do with your clients, are there common emotions or beliefs around money that you see that typically hold women back?
Very much so. And so early on in my journey of becoming a coach, I was sort of gifted in relationship with the divine, like this framework. And it took me quite a while actually from getting the download around this idea. It started out as an idea of like the Enneagram, but for money. And I really had this sense that in the same way, if you're familiar with the Enneagram, that we've been really kind of conditioned to seek love and approval, whether it's through helping others, whether it's through achievement, like all of these different things, I had this sense that the same thing was true for money. And so it all kind of came in as this framework. but I didn't actually have any experience coaching women on money at that point. And so I felt a little bit like, who am I to come out with this whole framework of money and the way that we relate to it? And so I started coaching women, and through that, it was confirmed to me that indeed these 6 money wounds that I identified were in fact the 6. And often we have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 of them to varying degrees. And so I see a lot of common patterning. And I myself find that like having a diagnosis, like having something that we can label and say like, oh, that's that wound. That's not really me. That's not the highest expression of me and my sovereignty. That's just this relic or this old trauma or this money wound that is feeling triggered, and I'm feeling a feeling about that, and I'm wanting to take action based on that. Being able to name that and create it as something sort of other than ourselves is such a powerful tool towards completely changing the way that we relate to money.
So what are those 6?
Yeah. So there's the money shame wound, which is like, I'm not worthy of money. Evil money wound. If I have too much money, I'm bad, or I'm going to be judged, or I'm not going to belong in my community. The hard money wound. If I want to earn more, I've got to work harder. There's the money trust wound. I don't trust myself with money. There's the safe money wound. I'm not going to feel safe until there's, a large stack of cash in the bank. And the disappearing money wound, which is like, I don't trust money. I think money is actually going to abandon me and the rug's going to get pulled out from under me.
The trust one is so interesting because I didn't even realize that was like a trust wound until it was your money wounds program that pulled it out for me. And I was like, wow, I knew I had like the evil one where, people are going to abandon me if I have it. Mm-hmm. But then I think, do you think some of those wounds can cause the other ones? Like for me, I really feel like the evil money wound, if I have it, people will abandon me, led to the lack of trust, because then I was getting this money, but I was like, God, I can't keep it. So I'd get rid of it. And then that led to this lack of trust in myself. Do you think that can happen as well?
Yeah, there are definitely certain money wounds that tend to like tango together, or where one begets the other, or you kind of really feel both of them quite a bit. So yeah, it's really interesting for you to be like, oh, okay, evil was probably at the core, but because of that, because I like the smart part of me was choosing my belonging over my wealth, then I was doing things that made me feel like, oh, I can't handle money. Well, actually, you could handle money just fine. It's just that like, who would want this thing that they think is going to mean abandonment from the people they love and care about the most?
So once we've identified these wounds, how do we start breaking the cycle so that we can normalize women making and keeping and having large amounts of money?
Yeah, I suspect that the healing process is not too terribly different than probably what you'll hear from a lot of your speakers that are talking on a lot of different topics, whether it's intimacy or shame or stepping into your power or using your voice. Like, we have to learn how to identify what's going on inside of our bodies, first and foremost. And then when we can get to the heart of it and really understand the root cause, I find that the medicine tends to be relatively intuitive. It feels really hard when we don't know what it is, when we're just like, I just feel really scared, or this just feels really bad, or I don't know why it is, but every time I want to go on social media, I just procrastinate and I find myself doing 15 other things. Well, that's a hard problem to solve. And you'll hear, the masculine energy is just like, just do it. Right. And the more feminine way is like, okay, well, what's actually going on? What if we go a layer deeper, a layer deeper, a layer deeper? Because it's like, once you get to that root cause, whether it's, again, money or being afraid to show up online, it's like, oh, I'm so scared to use my voice because it feels like I'm going to get persecuted. Okay. So what's the medicine for that? Even if you've never signed up for a program or worked with a coach on that, you probably intuitively have a sense of what would feel like it creates some safety in your body once you know what's really going on. And so that's why in my Money Wound Medicine program and in the money quiz, which we'll link up for everybody to go check out, it's totally free. There's such power in the diagnosis. And so it's like naming it and then spending a little time with yourself to be like, oh, this is how it feels in my body, and I like to pick on myself when I'm talking about these money wounds because we all have them and we all act crazy when we're in our trigger, but it's hard to laugh at yourself when you're triggered. So I'll tell the story of my sweet husband who has tended to be more in his feminine energy when I was more in my wounded masculine need to control all the things. And so he would like to look online at real estate and check out all of these multi-million-dollar listings where we live in Southern California. And he would be in like full dreamer mode and he would send them to me. So I'd get these texts from Jeff with these Zillow links and I would click on it and it would be, this $3 or $5 million home with its own tennis court and private pool and ocean views. And you know what that felt like in my body? I felt like fear. And I couldn't actually even name that for a long time. Like I was so disconnected from what was happening, but it really felt like fear because what it triggered for me was my safe money wound. And I felt like he was being completely out of touch with our financial situation, that I was on my own. I had to be the one to make sure that we were safe and that the money was in the bank and that we were well protected, because here's this wacko over here that has no idea how we could actually pay for that. And God forbid he gets the keys to the kingdom and he's got control of the money. Like, who knows what bad thing is going to happen? I think we can all see that that is like a triggered state, right? My husband sends me a Zillow listing like, oh, we're going to live in a house like this one day. And I go to fear, control. Oh my God, he's crazy. He doesn't know what's going on. I have to be the one to make sure that we're okay with money. So it's like being able to name that as something other than like, I'm broken. And be able to name, oh, this is the safe money wound. Okay, this fear is showing me that I feel really unsafe right now. Like there's this feeling like the money could go to something that we can't actually afford, and then it wouldn't be here in our bank account, and that doesn't feel good to me. Oh, okay, so what I'm actually craving is safety. So can I create some of that feeling for myself? Maybe I can have a conversation with my husband, not like, don't ever look at nice houses, but just, hey, we're on the same page, babe, right? That like, this is you dreaming. And maybe we can even come up with an amount that we would need to have in the bank in order for something like this that we would want to pull the trigger and actually take some action. So I really think the healing is individualized and intuitive, and it can be so helpful to have a coach. But if we don't really understand what we're trying to heal at the root cause, then I don't really think that having the coach or reading the next book is going to be all that helpful.
I like that you say that, because if we don't actually understand what we're healing, then we can't even know which coach is the right one aligned for us to choose.
Yeah.
Right. And we're just like grasping at straws like, oh, well, this person, they make millions of dollars or they make X amount per month. So that's the coach that I have to go to. But if you're out of touch with your own alignment, then you can't figure out who's in alignment with you.
Totally. And particularly like when we're out of touch, often we end up being in our damsel in distress, right? So we're like, can I hire this coach because he or she is going to be the white knight that actually rescues me and saves me from this thing that I haven't even figured out what it is. But like when we realize what the root cause is, and we recognize like, oh, I'm feeling really unsafe in my body, then it becomes a little harder to be like, oh, I'm going to hire this coach who's going to make me feel safe in my body. Like, we kind of understand that that's an inside job and that we can hire a coach for some support and some energy work or whatever that looks like. But we actually reclaim our part of the equation, which is the most powerful part.
Thank you for saying that, because I think, again, people are looking for that, society has kind of programmed us that the answer is external, right? Yeah. To have happiness, you need this car or this bra or this makeup or whatever. And I think that has gone on to coaches a lot too. Well, this coach is going to fix me. And if they don't, they're the scam, or, their technique doesn't work, or this doesn't work. But nothing's going to work unless we're willing to own our part in it and find that alignment and come back to ourselves.
Totally. They oversold me. Okay, well, what part of me was actually a match for being oversold? Oh, it was like the part of me that wanted someone else to be right and someone else to have the answers.
I love that. And I love the naming, having the name. It's like Brene Brown says, if we name shame, it kind of takes some of the fizzle out of the fire. And then we can have those conversations of like, hey, the story I'm telling myself, I totally resonated with your story, because my husband does it all the time too. And I'm like, oh yeah, a $3 million house, no pressure.
Yeah. Like, so, some reason I'm not feeling as excited about that as you are.
Yeah. And he was like, I don't understand why you're not excited. Like, I thought we were in dream mode. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's the mode that I need to shift into. Maybe we need to put that in the text message, like for dream mode time. Yeah. Instead of, hey, we're moving in a couple months. Let's, here's a house that's opened up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can do you have any tips for women who want to open themselves up? Because receiving is another big thing, right? This whole like independent woman, we know it's a trauma response, but society's again told us like, to be the badass, you've got to be the independent woman, which means that we struggle to receive.
Yes.
And so how can women start to open themselves up to be able to receiving so that the money can flow?
Yeah, such a great question. And I think often when we think we're doing money work, we put a lot of pressure on it because we add a lot of meaning to money. And so often, although I work with women on money, I will give examples that don't feel related to money, because when the pressure is off, it's a little easier to play. And play is such an important part of receiving. So, for example, like receiving compliments, letting someone hold the door open for you. Here's one that might feel really triggering for you. You're a mom and you're going to be solo parenting for a few days while your partner is out of town. What about asking for some support from someone in your community? Asking if someone would be willing to bring over dinner for you. If that immediately triggers in you, like, oh no, I can cook dinner, I can take care of that. Like, well, there's an opportunity to just lean more into receiving, because people love to give and they love to help. And when we're in our masculine, when we're giving, we want people to really be radical receivers and to be like, oh, thank you so much. How did you know? I really appreciate that. Oh, I'm so grateful for you. We don't want people to be like, oh, no, you shouldn't have. Oh, that's all right. I mean, I could have done that on my own. That doesn't feel good. And so when we understand that from the masculine side of the equation, then we sort of intuitively understand what it looks like on the feminine side of the equation when it feels good. Just like, can you receive a compliment? Ah, thank you so much. Can you receive support? Maybe can you even ask for support? And then with money, celebrating it can really create a more playful energy. I made a reel a while back that you can go look up at and Makes Money. But when people pay me, I do a little dance and I put a puffball into this jar to represent that transaction. And then when the jar is full, like I just bought myself a treadmill. Now I could have bought the treadmill. I could have bought it like 6 months ago. It really wasn't about the money. Like I have a lot of money in the bank account. I could have bought 10 treadmills. It's about what I want to make it mean. And like, I want to infuse that celebration into it. I don't want to have a business so big that people are just numbers to me and that I take for granted the money flowing in. So if you're on a 3-pay with me and you're making 3 installments, I'm going to celebrate you 3 different times, like every time the money comes through. Because I also want, when you get that email reminding you that the transaction just happened, it's like also an energetic invitation for you to be in celebration that you chose that, and to reconnect with your desire to be in relationship with me and in a container with me. And so I think when we can start with these things that don't feel so pressurized, like I need to make 5K in the next week, so I'm going to read this manifestation book and I'm going to really get into receiving mode. It's like, whoa, that's going to feel a lot harder than these other ways of receiving.
I love your celebration, and I want to come back to celebration in a minute. One of the biggest breakthrough moments I had for myself in learning to receive was that it feels good to give. And so when we block ourselves from receiving, what we're actually doing is stealing that person, the giver. We're stealing their opportunity to have a moment of joy. And so like the thing that we give back, a lot of women feel like, well, I'm indebted to this person now, so now I have to give them something. Well, the thing you're actually giving them is being able to feel good about themselves, or being able to feel useful, being able to feel helpful or needed or worthy in some cases, right? We don't always know why people give things to us. And so when we receive, we give people that opportunity back to them.
I love that so much. And I think when you tap more into the feminine energy as well, and like we really zoom out, the feminine is like the muse. Like her value is in her being, in her beauty, in her energy, in her way of being in the world. Like that is the gift. And so when we can appreciate that part of ourselves and understand that, then opportunities are magnetized to us. People want to go out of their way to help us. And we can be in the joy of receiving that. It just starts this fun snowball. And money is just energy, just like everything else. And so we're doing the money work all the time, whether we call it that or whether we think we are or not, just in giving people the gift of our receiving and the gift of our being, and amplifying that energy and believing that that's worthy and valuable, more money will flow to us.
And so coming back to the celebration piece, when I talk about celebrating, people always think like, it has to involve a lot of money. Like I have to buy, the best bottle of champagne, or I've got to go like spend all of this money. And so how am I ever going to get ahead where every time I receive money, I'm spending it? What are some other ways? I love your puffball example. What are some other ways that people can celebrate that money coming to them? Because ultimately we know gratitude opens us up and makes us a magnet for more.
Yeah. I think like getting creative with what feels good to you. So when I put the puffballs in the jar, like I put on a money song and I dance. So it's like, it's really amplifying that in my body and just allowing me to feel it and take space with it. So I think it's like, make it fun. One of my clients did this and she put like gorgeous shells in it that she collected from the beach. And I was like, oh, okay, well now I want to upgrade my little Amazon puffballs. But yes, the celebration, whatever you purchase, if you choose to purchase something, can be something you were already going to purchase anyway. And what I learned from my mentor, Melanie on Layer, that just was unlocked such a code for me was really the art of anticipation. Because when you know you're going to get the thing, like I knew I was going to get the treadmill. There wasn't any doubt in my mind that the treadmill was on its way. So I got to be in the anticipation of it. Then I get to buy it. Then I get to see it in my room as the symbol of all of these women who have said yes to themselves and yes to working with me. It's just an amplification. So whether it's like buying yourself the new underwear that you've been wanting, or buying new dishes because some of yours are cracked, or buying a new favorite coffee mug that costs $4 from TJ Maxx, it's like the money doesn't really matter. By the way, I ended up buying my treadmill used on Facebook Marketplace because that was like, it was the exact one that I wanted. I was able to get it right away instead of be on a 4-month wait list. And I got it for $360 instead of $750. So like I'm not the money coach that's like all the flashy luxury stuff. And I'm glad that those women exist because I think that can be really activating and amplifying for some women that are super into luxury items. But also, it can be a treadmill off of Facebook Marketplace, and we can turn that into a whole incredible energetic situation as well.
I love it. So if you had one last message to share with those who are watching, what would it be?
Connect with your body. I really think as women, and certainly for myself, we've learned to not listen to her, to not pay attention to the messages she's trying to give us. And often that was a coping mechanism as well. And so it served us at some point. But as we're talking about this larger context of breaking the cycles, part of the way that the cycle perpetuates is when we're actually not connected in to what feels like a yes and what feels like a no to us. And if we're not connected to ourselves, then we will outsource that decision to other people, and we will end up going against ourselves and perpetuating a cycle that doesn't serve us. So really doing this work of breaking the cycle, doing body work, reconnecting with what feels like a yes inside of your body will serve you so incredibly well in this life.
Awesome. I love it so much. So people want more of your genius. Where can they connect with you?
I hang out on Instagram at mmakesmoney. I'm on Facebook, Emily June Wilcox. And I would love for everyone listening to go take the money quiz, which is just at moneywoundsquiz.com.
Awesome. And we will link all of that up on the page for everybody. Emily, thank you so much for joining me. I've loved every minute of this interview.
My pleasure. Thank you.